Hello, my friends. Today we'll start with some good news. President Zelensky had a conversation with Drapati. As a result, Drapati is staying and now holds the position of commander of the joint forces, focusing 100% on the front. Here is his statement. I had a lengthy conversation with the president. I reported everything that's currently known about the tragedy at the training ground, every step, who was on site, who was responsible for the people, who was supposed to act. I explained to the head of the state the reasons behind my decision. The president listened, supported me, and proposed that I focused on the main thing the war, the front line, and victory. I'm grateful to the Commander in Chief for his trust, for our shared understanding of responsibility, and the vision of the changes our army needs. We must change the internal culture of the military, the culture of how commanders treat their soldiers, their duties, and the value of every Ukrainian soldier's life. We took up arms to defend Ukraine. I've been assigned a task by the president. I remain in service on the front line where I need to be, where I can do the most. Glory to Ukraine. Friends, let's support Drapati in the comments because he's truly an important person for Ukraine, respected by the soldiers of the armed forces and someone who can lead the military wisely. So now there is hope that the situation at the front will be held as steadily as possible. Also, as you can see, there have been some other changes. Madjar has been appointed commander of the unmanned systems forces. As a result, the Ukrainian troops are very satisfied with the new appointments and believe that the Russians will now be eliminated even more effectively, which is very good news. Meanwhile, following the talks, Trump stated that he's unhappy with the outcome but still doesn't plan to impose sanctions.
Does the president support the Senate moving forward with a bill imposing heavy sanctions on Russia?
Look, the president has spoken about his position on sanctions on Russia. He has smartly kept this as a tool in his toolbox if necessary. But I think the Senate and everyone on Capitol Hill respects the president is the commander in chief for a reason. And as you know, Russia and Ukraine engaged in direct talks yesterday. That was at the encouragement of this president when he spoke to both leaders of both countries via phone just a couple of weeks ago. And so I would just like to remind everybody how far we have come in just 4 months. I mean, it was inconceivable last year at this time for Russia and Ukraine to be engaged in direct talks. And it's because of the president's insistence and determination to get this war to an end that these countries sat down yesterday. So he's willing to use sanctions if he needs them, and the Senate and the Capitol Hill understand that the president is the commander in chief and he's leading United States foreign policy as he should.
Friends, be sure to share your thoughts in the comments. As for the Crimean Bridge, yes, there was looks like stronger hits are needed. Some Russian sources are claiming there is a crack, but for now we are waiting to see how the situation develops. Meanwhile, the situation at the border is catastrophic. The Russians are steadily advancing, and so far, stopping them hasn't been possible. Yesterday, the Russians announced they had captured Andriivka. The Ukrainian side hasn't confirmed this yet, so we are waiting for updates. However, activity in this area remains very high, and on the location map, you can clearly see how large the gray zone has become. This shows that the Russians are actively assaulting and breaking through. The Ukrainian forces are still trying to repel the attacks, but they are no longer in control of part of the territory. Soldiers confirm that they are being forced to retreat under Russian pressure. Russian FPV drones are hitting us hard near Kindrativka. we had to pull back from the northern houses. The central area is being shelled by artillery, so we are staying low, but the Russians are already close. I feel we'll have to pull back south. Andreevka is still under recon. The Russians are carrying out stabilization measures both in the air and on the ground. In neighboring Oleksievka, they are slowly moving into the southern street, still in the gray zone. The Russians are also starting to push us out of Novomykolaivka, coming from the Vodolache area. They're also trying to bypass Yablunivka from the west. They've also almost reached the pond and are moving in from the tree line to the east. Battles for the village are expected soon. As for Khotyn, we will defend it hard. God willing, will hold it, because if we lose it, it will become a major staging ground for the Russians. They could build up forces and bring in all their strike capabilities to try and attack the city. We mustn't let the Russians get entrenched here, otherwise the scenario could get very bad. Analysts are also reporting that the Russians may not try to capture Sumy, since it's a fairly large city. However, they are likely to move closer in order to launch FPV drone attacks. The overall situation in Sumy region isn't great, but at least the guys are managing to take out a good number of Russian bikers with mines. Most likely, the Russian goal is to reach the line between Khotyn, Pysarivka, Kynastivka, and Marine. No one's planning to storm Sumy directly, it's too big, but they 100% want to get close enough to terrorize it with FPV drones, which is more than enough to turn it into a dead city. In terms of tactics, over the past few weeks, they've been increasingly relying on motorcycle assault groups. Yesterday, one of those groups got a nice response from our artillery and FPV drones. Meanwhile, on the Kharkiv front, Russian forces continue striking the city of Kharkiv, though there have been any new offensive operations recorded along the front line. In Vovchansk, battles are ongoing and the front line remains unchanged for now. In the Dvorichna direction, attacks on Doroshivka and Dovhenka continue, but activity remains relatively low, just a few assaults per day. So far, the Russians haven't been able to advance further. Still, the situation has worsened, mainly because FPV drones are being used more actively, and the Russians are pushing forward on multiple sections on the front. In the Kupiansk direction, Russian forces are conducting assaults near Pishane and Stepova-Novoselivka, but they've made no progress and the situation remained unchanged over the past 24 hours. In the Borova direction, Russian forces are assaulting Boguslavka and Zeleny High, but apart from that, there is no major activity and the front line remains unchanged. In the Liman direction, however, the Russians have significantly increased its activity. They are pushing toward Karpivka, trying to secure a position near a water barrier, and are also assaulting Glushenkova, Zelena Dolina, Ridko Dub, Novy Mir, Olgivka, and Druzhelubivka. Importantly, yesterday's geolocation map confirmed that Russian forces did manage to establish a foothold near Karpivka. This is now verified as Ukrainian forces released footage of striking Russian troops inside Karpivka, the clearest evidence that the Russians have advanced and dug in. The situation is rapidly deteriorating, with another village now fallen under Russian control. Moreover, they've already managed to cross into the western part of the village, breaching the water barrier, which gives them the opportunity to expand the front, not just south toward Liman, but also west toward Borova and the Oskil Reservoir. So, unfortunately, the front line in this area is also beginning to shift in Russia's favor. In the Siversk direction, attacks continue on Serebryanka and Grigorivka, where the Russian forces are also trying to break through near Verkhnyo-Kamensk. However, despite an increase in activity, they haven't succeeded in advancing, and the front line has remained unchanged over the past day. In the Chasiv Yar direction, Russian forces are continuing assaults on Bila Hora and trying to break through from Kurdyumivka toward Deliyivka. There are also confirmed clashes in the areas of Druzhba and Pishiyevka. Despite these constant attacks, Ukrainian defenders are holding the line, and there have been no changes in the front line over the past 24 hours. In the area around the Klebenbeek reservoir, Russian forces are attempting to encircle Ukrainian troops and push toward Yablonivka. The Ukrainian forces are doing everything possible to hold the line to prevent the Russians from executing this plan. Otherwise, losses could be severe. So far, over the past 24 hours, the front line hasn't changed, but fighting continues, and Ukrainian troops report that the Russians are slowly advancing. On the Kostiantynivka front, the Russians have advanced up to 2 kilometers south of Yablonivka. With support from armored vehicles, they managed to land and move into two forest lines. Critically, no fire was directed at them during this operation, and they pulled back under a smoke screen. It's still unclear how many troops they dropped into the woods, hopefully not many, and will take care of them soon. The gray zone north of Zorya is expanding, which may indicate our troops have pulled back from the northernmost homes, though we can't confirm that yet. However, the Russians now control most of the village and seems poised to push toward the settlement of Oleksandro Kalinovo. In the Pokrovsk direction, Russian forces continue to carry out some of the most intense assaults. Attacks persist in the areas of Malinivka and Mirolyubivka, while Lysivka, Dachinske, and Chunishine are under assault. Fighting is ongoing on the outskirts of Pokrovsk as well as in Udachne and Novosergiyevka, with heavy shelling across the region. Despite the pressure, Ukrainian forces have successfully repelled all attacks in the past 24 hours, and the front line remains unchanged. Additionally, in the Donetsk direction, it's reported that roads have already been designed for anti-drone netting installation. In Donetsk region, specific roads have been selected for protection using anti-drone mesh, according to the regional military administration. Funding was allocated from the regional budget last week to support this effort. The local authorities were waiting on the Ministry of Defense to certify the protective structures, said Vadim Filyashkin, head of the Donetsk region military administration. In the Novopavlivka direction, Russian forces continue assaults on Muravka, are attempting to break through near Kotlarivka, and are also storming Oleksiivka. Fighting is ongoing near the villages of Bahatyr and Odradne. Additionally, the Russians are attempting to advance across open fields toward the village of Komar. Despite this high level of offensive activity, there have been no changes to the front line over the past 24 hours. In the Velika Novosilka direction, the Russians are continuing attacks on the villages of Vilne Pole, Zelene Pole, and Novopil. Russian activity remains intense, but they haven't achieved any gains. Ukrainian forces don't confirm any Russian control over Zelene Pole and Novopil, and combat is ongoing in the area. In the Gulyai Pole direction, Russian forces are attempting to advance toward the village of Poltavka. Earlier assaults were recorded near Malinivka, but none of these efforts have resulted in breakthroughs, and the front line has remained unchanged over the past 24 hours. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, the Russians continue assaults on Stepove and carries out shelling, but offensive activity here remains minimal and the front line remains stable. In the Kherson direction, Russian forces are continuing to shell the right bank of the Dnipro River, but no new offensive actions have been recorded and there have been no changes to the front line over the past 24 hours. And that's all from me. So please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.